Good morning and welcome to the Pondering Show here on WKUR-FM, your country road. I'm your host, Doug Ponder, and I'm joining you live here at the Don Franklin Chevy Buick GMC Studios in good old Renfro Valley, Kentucky. Well, we can all take a deep breath and think clearly once again now that the 2014 midterm election is finally over. I don't know about you, but to me, every election we have seems more and more like a major sporting event. It's like the candidates, they all travel around, they try to out-campaign each other, and they do things like speak at community events and march in parades. And if a candidate hears that an opponent kissed 10 babies at one of these events, then they will try to outdo him by kissing 11. And with politics becoming more and more competitive like a sport, I think it's safe to say that the campaign for the primary election is kind of like a regular season for candidates. Then, if a candidate wins the primary election, the campaign for the general election in November becomes like the playoffs. That only features the best of the best. And it's true, and people get excited over sports. They love it. Everyone has their favorite team, and they go to their favorite team's games to cheer them on. And it's becoming the same for politics, as everyone has their favorite candidates, and they go to the events they speak at during the campaign to support them. ESPN has picked up on this, and they're not dummies up there at ESPN. And I think it won't be long until they start covering campaign events and election results on SportsCenter, because they don't want to miss out on covering a major sport. Now, we for sure had a big playoff game here in Kentucky for the U.S. Senate seat that ended up practically being a blowout, just like the Super Bowl did in January between the Seahawks and the Broncos. Mitch McConnell ended up sweeping his opponent, Alison in the midterm election on Tuesday. He got 56% of the vote compared to her 41%. Now, McConnell fans will be glad to hear that for a limited time only, Sports Illustrated is offering a special commemorative issue about McConnell's U.S. Senate win for 3 easy payments of $9.95. Ooh, and there's a bonus. The first 100 callers will also receive a rare 8x10 picture of McConnell, signed by none other than the Senate Majority Leader himself. What a deal, baby! Now, everyone at Camp Mitch was excited Tuesday night after the dust had settled and they figured out who won the election. Mitch had a big celebration party in Louisville where he also gave a victory speech. Mitch and all his supporters had a good time, mingling and McConnelling with each other. Now, Alison Grimes, on the other hand, also got her supporters together Tuesday night as they all sat around and watched the results come in, and obviously they weren't having as good of a time as the McConnell camp was. But the Democrats were worried, because after Grimes gave her losing speech to her supporters and left her loser party, she told her staff that she was going to leave for a few days and just kind of go off the grid, and have time to grieve over this loss. She didn't tell them where she was going or what she would be doing. Her staff was worried to death, but, they understood this. Everybody needs time to themselves. So Grimes went on to ponder about life. And after a couple of days, it passed, and her staff kind of got word that someone said they saw her down there in Pigeon Forge. So her supporters immediately went down there and discovered that she was staying in a remote cabin deep in the Smoky Mountains. They said it was awful. They pulled up into the driveway, got out of their cars, and they said they could hear her just sobbing heavily from inside the cabin. They said that they knew it'd be a mess. When they went into the cabin, they found her sitting in a recliner, watching the Notebook movie on TV. She was surrounded by used Kleenexes and several empty cartons of Rocky Road ice cream. Actually, she was working on another carton of Rocky Road when they found her, but they were able to stop her before she ate that whole one. They said her hair was a mess. Makeup had smeared all over her face, mascara had run down her face, and she had raccoon eyes. And they said all she could say to them was, "I told them I loved Co. And I told them I wanted to raise the minimum wage. And I told them I'd fight for equal pay for women. And they still voted for that turtle instead of me. Why? Why?" Just so sad for her. But don't worry about Alison, folks. She is well taken care of. She has a staff like the people like Olivia Pope off the Scandal TV show, and they'll whip her back into shape. I know it looks bad right now, but she is in good hands. Well, they brought her back up here to Kentucky, and they're working on trying to get her back into shape, because the word on the street is The Democrat Party wants her to run for Kentucky governor, and they know that they need a better candidate than Jack Conway. I just noticed that everybody kind of got a little squeamish in the studio, but you know what? It's okay. I joked about both parties and their candidates, and it's like my dear friend Shannon Franklin said to me one time when he was giving me advice about jokes. He said, always remember to be an equal opportunity offender. And that's the motto I live by. So speaking of being an equal opportunity offender, that's exactly what we're going to do today with today's topic. Now, everyone has probably already heard by now, but Brad Keselowski, I struggle with that name, and Jeff Gordon had a cat fight in pit road after the NASCAR race Sunday night. It's hard to talk about NASCAR because everyone has a driver they love and everyone has a driver they hate. So we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to look at the events that led up to the fight and what caused Jeff to confront Brad. And then we're also going to look at other fights in NASCAR, and we're going to end up talking about, is it possible that we can prevent fights or assaults from happening in NASCAR and other sports as well? So stay tuned because you won't want to miss this show. Welcome back to the Pondering Show here on WKUR 94.9, your country road. We are coming to you live here at the Don Franklin Chevy Buick GMC studios. Now, our guest this morning is a professional drag racer, and he's also an agricultural teacher in Perry County. Lewis Mink, thanks for coming in, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Doug, for having me here. Really look forward to today's show.
Oh, it's going to be great. Like I said, we're all going to be equal opportunity offenders with this topic, so we're going to do it. Might as well get prepared for it, folks. Well, I'm going to give a quick recap of what exactly happened because I know that there's been some confusion and differing reports about it in the news media. But during the AAA Texas 500 race at the Texas Motor Speedway last Sunday, an incident happened in the final laps with Jimmy Johnson in first, Jeff Gordon was in second, and Brad Keselowski was in third. Gordon took the outside lane and drifted up a bit, which created a gap between him and Johnson. Well, Brad Keselowski tried to shoot through that gap as Gordon tried to close it, what it appeared to be. And Keselowski and Gordon made contact, and moments later, Gordon ended up spinning out and finished the race in 29th place. While Johnson went on to win the race, and Keselowski still finished in third behind Kevin Harvick, who just drove around them all. So Gordon ended up spinning out because of a flat tire that was reportedly caused by the contact with Keselowski. And I say reportedly because that's been heavily debated this week. But anyway, the race, after the race, Gordon stopped on pit road right next to Keselowski and his crew. And then Gordon's crew come over, and then other racers and their crews come over to Keselowski's camp there on pit road because they all knew what was fixing to happen, obviously. And Gordon confronted Keselowski about the wreck, and both crews also started yelling at each other. And then out of nowhere, Harvick comes up behind Keselowski and shoves him, which causes punches to be thrown in a big mosh pit that started creating. Now, real quick, I will read what both Keselowski and Gordon have said about the incident. And Keselowski said that he was just racing to win. He said he left a hole, and that when you leave a hole, you're supposed to go through it. He said it closed back up, and we made contact. I didn't want to ruin anyone's day. I just wanted to win the race. That was our opportunity. It just didn't come together. And then he said, I don't know that it is my job to race 100%, and that's what I did today. I didn't wreck anyone, but I certainly raced hard. Well, Gordon said, out of nowhere, I just got slammed by the number 2 car, and I cut my left rear tire, and a bunch of bleeps there. And then the way he races, I don't know how he's ever won a championship. I'm just sick and tired of it. We had the car. We had the position. He gets himself in these situations, and as far as I'm concerned, he's got to pay the consequences. And that's what Gordon said about Keselowski. And then he said, I'm going to race him the same way he races me. That's the kind of stuff that's just uncalled for. And to them, it's just a racing incident, but to me, it's a bunch of crap. That's what Gordon said. So after this long description of what all happened here, and this stuff, actually, when you look at it, you can YouTube it, it happens in all varieties of racing, whether it's drag racing, dirt track racing, motorcycle racing, whatever. So, Lewis, as a racer, what did you take from the incident last Sunday?
What I took from it was that Gordon was mad that Brad tried to shoot the gap, and there was a wide enough gap for Brad to try to shoot. There was at least a car and a half wide, and Brad goal is to win the race, and that's what he was trying to do. He tried to shoot the gap. To me, it looked like Gordon tried to come down to block him, but when he come down, he was too late, and Brad was already there. And Gordon's left side rear tire was cut because he hit or bumped Brad's car. All this stems from what happened at Charlotte. Everybody's mad at Brad right now because of the way that he acted after the Charlotte race. Another thing that's contributing to everything is the fact that the new chase for the championship is set up. It's set up that 16 drivers will start for the chase after, I believe it's 26 races. And then it goes to 12, then it goes to 8, and then it goes to 4.
Yeah.
And you've got to have points so that you can be in it, so that you can win the championship. And everybody's all tore up trying to win races, and it just ends up being drama fest.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to win races.
And they're trying to get those points, that position, to at least make it to that Final Four, pretty much, right?
Yeah,
yeah. So, well, and you touched on something, too, and I didn't mention this, but the Charlotte incident, I think it was October the 12th. It was sometime at the beginning of October. And to me, I'm going to throw my opinion in on that. To me, Keselowski was more in the wrong there than he was last Sunday. I mean, he just literally tried to slam into, what's his name? Matt Kenseth? That's who it was. Yeah, he just tried to slam into them, and then after the race, Kenseth jumped Brad behind the racing trailers, kind of like a WWE brawl in the backstage or something. And that was just a big, huge fight, more than what this even was, really.
Well, and the way that broke down at Charlotte was Brad, after the whole race was over, Brad was trying to hit him, hit Kenseth. Well, he ended up hitting Kenseth, and when you're after the race, everybody's unbuckling their seatbelts, taking their helmets off, getting their gloves off, everything like that. And Brad just comes around and just slams him. And he keeps doing it, and then they try to go down pit road, and he tries to hit him, but he ends up hitting Tony Stewart. Yeah. And Tony's in enough trouble.
Bless his heart, yeah.
And Tony couldn't do nothing, but he backed into him, and then it just all went from there. And that's why everybody's mad at Brad right now. It's not really, Gordon's mad because of the way he's been acting.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And, and then I'm going to bring this question up because this is what a lot of people's been asking. Is the maneuver that Keselowski did during the race last Sunday, he tried to shoot through that gap, that open just for that split moment. Is that maneuver actually illegal in NASCAR rules?
No, it's not illegal. If there's a gap, you're supposed to go through it. If you can get through it without harming other drivers, there's nothing against it. Now, if you go and slam somebody, try to make a gap, they can black flag you, which means you have to go to the pit road for one lap or so many laps. But really, he did nothing wrong. There was at least a car and a half. I've watched videos. I've seen pictures. There was a car and a half. And, if I was in Brad's shoes and I seen that gap and I could pass without touching anybody, I'm going to shoot it.
Yeah. So. And that's just – well, and that brings up another question because I've heard this talked about a lot, and this is what I took from it, just being an outsider view of it. So what Keselowski did by shooting that gap, is that almost considered kind of like unsportsmanlike conduct in NASCAR? Because it's not against the rules, but it's just the way Gordon and all them seem to act is like it was unsportsmanlike. Is that kind of a way to look at it?
Well, it can be. It depends on, who. Each driver has their own way of racing and the way they think things should be done. And maybe Gordon thought that, he shouldn't try to shoot the gap because he was endangering, wrecking him or wrecking everybody else. That's basically what Gordon has said. He had an interview, I believe it was either Thursday or Friday, and I read his notes. And basically he was saying that he thought that Brad was going to try to wreck him and by shooting that gap. And he didn't like it, but it's not unsportsmanlike. I mean, if there's plenty of room and you got enough room to get by, it's not unsportsmanlike. Gordon was just retaliating for his tire being blown out.
Yeah, and it, like you said, it just all kind of boiled over because it's been building up with Gordon and all these other racers apparently from Charlotte and other races too, and it just kind of boiled over.
Yeah, it boiled over. Yeah. And another thing that I was reading that I just now thought of is by Gordon having being spun out, coming in 29th place, he's now going to have to win at Phoenix tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's the only way he's going to be able to make the chase. So he was just mad over being knocked back and going to have to win.
Yeah.
To make the chase.
It's kind of like that unsportsmanlike view. Because is Keselowski already in the chase? How did that work? I kind of got confused on that this week when I was looking at it.
I think basically he's in.
Okay, and see, Gordon looked at that like, well, hey, here's my chance to get in, but you just come through the gap and screwed it all up.
And that's why he's thinking it's unsportsman.
Okay. Because when I was thinking about it, and this is true in every sport, you take football, for example. Let's say the winning team at the moment's ahead by a field goal, 3, and they got the ball left, and the other team has no timeouts left, and there's about a minute 30 left on the clock, and they kneel down 3 times. Well, the other team can get upset and say, hey, that's unsportsmanlike. They should give us a fair chance. But, that's just not how football works. In the same way, too, when you say you got a real strong football team and a weak one, and they just keep running the score up on. I've heard that argument before. It's unsportsmanlike, but there's no rules against it. It's kind of the same in racing with Gordon in that situation, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's the same thing. Brad's out there for his sponsor. He's out there to win. He's out there for his team owner and his crew because his crew gave him a car.
Yeah,
and he's trying to win a race for them and to get more money and more.
You got to keep those sponsors.
Yeah,
and for their team, too as well. And, well, now do racers in go-kart and like dirt track and then drag racing too, well, not really drag racing as much, but definitely the, dirt track race stuff. Now, do they try to shoot gaps as well?
Yeah. If you watch any kind of round track racing, you see them trying to shoot gaps. If there's anything open where they can get through, they're going to go through it. And that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to get to the front so that you can win, and that's what he's doing.
That's right, because he's shooting that gap not with the intention of wrecking somebody. He's just trying to shoot it to get ahead of those two.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and, well, so what are some similar situations in drag racing that can be compared to Sunday's incident as far as Keselowski trying to shoot the gap or as far as stuff being considered unsportsmanlike or something?
But a couple of things that come to mind in drag racing, everybody has their own tendencies. Some people like to, for instance, stage first. Some like to stage last. And if you know that somebody likes, for instance, if I know someone likes to stage last, then I'm going to try to make them go in first. And it's not to make them mad at me. It's just I'm out there to win a race.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. That's one instance. And I'll tell you a good one. My dad, he always likes to stage first.
Yeah.
And I'll let him stage first, but I take my time. I've got 12 seconds to stage once he is staged. So I'll take 8-9 seconds and finally row in so that the tree, it'll be quick on him.
Yeah.
And he's not ready because he's waiting on me and he'll mess him up.
It throws him off his game mentally.
Yeah, it throws him off mentally.
Yeah.
And, I love my dad to death, but I'm out there to win a race. I don't care who's in the other lane. I'm going to try to win my race. And I do different things like that to try to mess the other guy up.
And that's not unsportsmanlike.
No.
That's just competitive nature,
yeah,
in a sense, pretty much. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to look at the penalties that NASCAR handed out, and we're going to kind of talk about those things, so don't go away. Welcome back to the Pondering Show here on WKUR-FM, your country road. We're here at the Don Franklin Chevy Buick GMC Studios in Renfro Valley, and we left off talking about NASCAR and the penalties they handed down. Now, NASCAR officials did not penalize or fine Jeff Gordon, Brad Keselowski, and Kevin Harvick for their actions in the post-race brawl, but they fined their crew chiefs, and they also, I know Gordon seemed to get the worst of the brunt. His crew chief was fined $50,000 and placed on probation for the next 6 races, and then another Gordon crew member was fined $10,000 and placed on probation for the next 3 races. And I'm not going to go through all the crew's penalties, but they were all kind of following the same thing, why the drivers seem to get off, scratch free pretty much. So what do you think about this? I mean, why did NASCAR not penalize the drivers?
Honestly, this is my opinion. The reason they didn't is because it's cause everybody want to watch NASCAR. Everybody's going to watch at Phoenix tomorrow. Everybody's is wanting to see what Brad and Jeff and even Kevin Harvick are going to do. And they didn't want to penalize them for that. And another thing, in my opinion, I think that the driver should have been penalized, either points or they should have been penalized with a fine or whatever the case may be, because that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah. And the penalties are there. It's like us in real life. When we commit a crime, we have to either serve the time or pay that high bail and stuff. We get penalized in order to try to prevent us from doing that in the future. And that's what these penalties are supposed to be for. But when the driver's just kind of scotch-free on it, that's not saying a good thing. But I'm like you, just points, or I understand not putting them on probation for the next few races with it being so narrowed down to now, but fines or points or something to at least put that out there. Hey, these type of actions aren't going to fly here.
And I agree, but in my opinion, if you I read an article from the different NASCAR analysis that you see and hear on TV. They say that it's got everybody wanting to watch it.
Yep.
Everybody's going to be able to watch it, and I'll be the first to admit I'm probably going to watch
most me too. Yeah.
I probably won't be able to watch all of it, but I'm going to sit there and watch so I can see if Jeff and Brad get next to each other. Is Jeff going to wreck him, or is they just going to let everything go?
Exactly. It's a big build-up to what – and then other drivers, too, of how they're going to respond to Brad, because they're all on the bandwagon, too, with Jeff. It seems like a few of them are.
Yeah.
And, and – That fight happened, and so these are the penalties that they gave for the fight. NASCAR gave these crews and stuff. Now, if a fight happens in drag racing, and I think it's the NHRA, right, that's over drag racing?
Yeah, NHRA and IHRA.
Okay. What do those organizations do if a fight happens in drag racing?
Well, if anything happens, if it's at a local track, for instance, like London Dragway, if they have a fight there, the track has – there's several things they can do. They can, number one, call a law, which they will anyway. But number two, they can be suspended for a whole year, or they can be suspended indefinitely, meaning you can't never come back to the track. Ooh. Then that goes to NHRA or IHRA, where they can suspend you for one season. They can suspend you for indefinitely, or however long they want to, and you can also be fined. A good instance that I can remember last night, I watched the John Force Tony Pedregon fight that happened in 2011, I believe, at the Mac Tools U.S. Nationals in Indianapolis. And John was trying to fight Tony over some things that had happened, and they never did really throw punches, but John got fined, I believe, $50,000 for his conduct that he had thrown.
Yeah, and I remember that video because he really trash talked, and the cameras, it wasn't like NASCAR. They were bless the media's heart. They're really good at that. They threw those big microphones and everything right in the middle of them and caught every bit of it. And that's going to be another point we're going to look up too. Kids watching at home on TV heard every single bit of that stuff, and when they see grown-ups acting, what kind of message does that send to them too? That's an issue as well.
And I agree with that. I read an article where one person was talking. They said that they wouldn't be watching NASCAR no more because of the fight, and they didn't want their kids to see it. Yeah. And some people's totally offended by the whole violence.
Yeah.
I mean, when I watch NASCAR, I don't really want to see them out there brawling. And a lot of people's going to be turned off by that. But you still have the many that are
turned on by that.
They're excited.
They're excited, and they're going to watch it just for that, pretty much. Yeah. And I'm like you with that as well. I like to see hard racing, them bumping each other and stuff, not wrecking each other on purpose, but, just the true hard racing, not the fights or actually sending somebody in the wall on purpose. Yeah. And that's something else too. Well, we're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we're going to take a closer look at the history of the rules and regulations of NASCAR and other forms of racing as well. So don't go away. Welcome back to the Pondering Show here on WKUR 94.9. We are joined here in the Don Franklin Chevy Buick GMC studios by drag racer Lewis Mink, and we're now going to look at the rules of NASCAR and how they've changed over the years since the actual sport was founded. Now, and as we all know, fighting in NASCAR is nothing unusual, and aggressive driving really isn't either. But now, Lewis, what are the current rules that limit aggressive driving in NASCAR and drag racing and other types of racing?
Well, in NASCAR, you're not allowed to hit like you used to. If you spin somebody out, then you're going to be black flagged.
Yeah.
If it's on purpose or intentional, you can be fined or suspended, either one. And in drag racing, we don't really have a whole lot of the hard driving stuff.
Yeah.
But with NASCAR, you see a whole lot of, back in the old days, back when I was younger, even in the 1990s, you've seen Dale Earnhardt Sr.
Yeah.
And I'll be the first to admit, I love to watch Dale Earnhardt Sr. I wasn't a fan of him, but I like to watch him because he'd bump, and I remember one, I can't remember, it was at Bristol, and he said, I was just trying to rattle his cage.
Yep.
And that's why people like NASCAR. In 2000, you really started seeing more and more people, them keeping them from rattling somebody's cages.
Yeah.
Now, ever since this new chase of the championship, you're starting to see it more. And it's becoming more interesting and stuff.
Yeah. And I think you hit a really good point there, and just on how the rules have changed throughout the years. Because when you look at NASCAR, they often say that the glory days were in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, back when Dale Earnhardt Sr. was just coming to his prime and stuff. And then it seemed like after he was killed in that wreck, it just kind of started slacking off in the 2000s, and now it's picking back up again. Yeah. And I'm like you, Dale Earnhardt Sr., I love him. I was kind of researching a little bit about him, and that's what he was. That was his answer. He never intended to actually hurt somebody. He would just say, "Well, I'm just trying to rattle him. I'm just trying to rattle him a little bit," And he would go and shake hands with him. Everything was fine afterwards, And I think there was another racer, and I forget his name, but he said that Dale Earnhardt Sr. would rattle his own mom's cage just to win a race. That's just, he was diehard, wanted to win, period. And that's how he was.
Yeah, and everybody loved Senior just because he done that kind of stuff. And, I wasn't a big fan of him, and I hate to admit this now, but
that's fine. Yeah.
At the time I was a Jeff Gordon fan, and I didn't like Senior because of everything that was going on. But, he's what made those guys, Rusty Wallace, the Labontes, all those guys is what helped form NASCAR for a lot of people that's our age.
Yeah.
They watch and they seen the wrecking. And Jeff Gordon even said in an interview that he posted, I believe it was yesterday, that, Dale Earnhardt would wreck you, but he didn't really mean to hurt you.
Yeah.
But if he did something and messed up, he'd come up to you after the race and he would have some kind of little joke, but he'd tell you he was sorry in his own way.
Yeah, kind of put his arm around him and stuff. I think Jeff Gordon said that. It was just a sportsmanlike deal for Dale Earnhardt, and because daggone, they got money. If the cars tear up, they can refix them back. That's no problem, But and that happened almost every race. Somebody's car would come out of the race looking like a tin can, pretty much, and they'd be back right there next week. That's how it worked. So, and like we mentioned, Dale Earnhardt's death really changed NASCAR, and I don't really know. You probably know more about this than I do. But did the rules actually change in the 2000s after his death that caused things to be more cautious, non-bumping, type stuff?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not really sure. But it seemed like during Senior's death, we seen more and more people getting hurt in wrecks.
Yeah.
If you look, there was several people that got killed during that time.
Yeah.
From like 2000 to I think 2004, we had 3 or 4 that ended up getting killed in wrecks. So it kind of changed how people approached it.
Yeah.
So
they wanted to make it more safe because these people were getting killed for reasons, And I know Earnhardt's death was the Hans device, which is like a neck device that they created for, and that's what he was killed for not having, supposedly, right?
Yeah.
And I read that one about the guy at the fire suit. His car, this is back in the 60s or something. His car caught on fire, and then they required drivers to have fire suits after that because he died of his burns and stuff. And, so NASCAR's done a great job with that. They look on how to make their drivers the safest they can be. And, by also having them drive hard as well, making it competitive. Because quite honestly, if every driver just lines up and they can't pass someone unless they know 110% they're not going to hit another car, not much is going to happen there. It's just kind of hard.
Well, and he'll be like driving down the interstate, basically. Well,
yeah,
maybe
exactly.
not that too good.
Except it's a round track. Yeah, yeah, because you're going to the odds of you bumping somebody trying to pass someone in NASCAR is it's pretty high.
Yeah,
and that's just kind of how it is. Well, and we're going to kind of change the subjects here. Now, are there times in drag racing that someone does something aggressive or does something to, throw off the opponent's game in an aggressive way, like we were talking about?
Yeah, you see that a lot. And if you go to, like, the NHR events, for instance, I'll go back to John Force.
Mm-hmm.
John Force likes to stage last.
Yeah.
And people will try to make him go in first. And it makes some people upset. Some people get really aggravated over that stuff. I've seen where people have got out of their cars griping at the other person. I've seen fights happen because of different things that's took on at the track.
Yeah.
And everything happens like that, and you just have to be the bigger man, in my opinion, and kind of just walk away, don't worry about it. But
that's right, and beat them on the track, not in a fight. That's kind of how it should work, right? And I know Jeff Gordon said that. He's like, well, I'm going to race him hard now. I'm like, well, I was sitting there thinking, well, shouldn't you have been racing him hard all year anyway?
Exactly.
I don't understand. Of course, I'm an outsider. I understand that. I'm not a NASCAR guru. But when I saw that, I was like, well, you should be racing him hard anyway.
Yeah,
that's what I look at it, And but I understand all the unsportsmanlike stuff, and all that, and what they're trying to say and things about Brad. But if you're a NASCAR driver, if you're a racer in anything, you should be kind of racing hard to begin with.
Yeah, I agree. And I go back to this unsportsman stuff. I was at a race one time, and I had a young man that I was in the finals with. It was me and him left. We was racing for the win, and I asked him if he wanted to split the money, which means we take the winner's purse and the runner-up's purse, put them together, and just split them down the middle. I asked him if he wanted to split, and he looked at me kind of funny and said, no, I would never split with you.
With you.
And that really got under my skin. I didn't want to fight him, but I told myself he won't never beat me again.
Yeah.
And we went out on the track, and I just dominated him.
Yeah.
And I've dominated him, I think, about 10 out of the last 11 times.
See?
So he beat me one time, but he ain't done it since.
There you go. See? So. And that's the way to handle those things in any sport. It shouldn't come to the point of being a fight, but, they're rivals and stuff, but, it should be on the field, on the track, on the court. That's how the rivalry should be held, or played out pretty much.
I agree.
And, and we're going to – we've already talked about this, but Dale Earnhardt Sr., he's a legend in NASCAR and things. And now there were several articles and NASCAR analysts and stuff that have come out, and one of them's including, very specifically, Kyle Petty, who used to be a pretty good driver, and he's an analyst now. They all become analysts after they drive. And he's compared Keselowski to Earnhardt Sr. Do you think that's an accurate comparison?
Well, to be honest with you, no. Nobody could ever be Dale Earnhardt Sr., but the way that he's going about things right now, I kind of can agree to part of it because he's out there to do whatever it takes to win.
He's got that mentality.
Yeah. And that's kind of my opinion. He's out there to win however he can, and that's how Senior was. But Senior was always one that he didn't care who it was. Like you said earlier, he'd wreck his own mom if it meant he was going to win. And
then take her out for lunch.
Yeah, he would take her out. They'd go to Red Lobster and eat or something other. But that's how Senior was. Now, Brad, on the other hand, he's a little more babyish, I guess I should say.
He takes things personally.
Yeah.
So I know what you mean. Yeah.
At Charlotte, if you noticed, something happened between him and Kenseth, and at the end of the race, everything's over with. Just go to your trailer and be done. He goes and tries to ram him, and he keeps hitting him, and he hits everybody in the world trying to get into him, and that's just that's kind of unsportsmanlike.
If
anything at all. So that's my opinion on him. I don't think he's more he ain't too much senior in my opinion.
No, he's got a long way to grow up to get to that point. And I agree with you because Senior didn't take anything personally.
Yeah.
You know, if that had happened to Dale Earnhardt Sr. at Charlotte, what happened to Brad, wherever it was, I forget what it was he got upset about, that he wanted to ram Kenseth, you know, Earnhardt Sr. would not have thought a thing about that.
No.
Pretty much, you know. And, yeah, and that's the problem. They're all taking it personally and trying to, you know, and it's all building up into a big soap opera debate or something, you know, and it's just kind of crazy. But, well, and the turntables here, do you think aggressive driving, you know, should be legal in all kinds of racing, or especially round track racing, if it's not intentional, kind of like what we've been talking about?
Yeah, I think it should be, because that's what the fans are coming to see. They want to see racing. They don't want to see everybody file on a big line and go around 500 laps and it's over with. Yeah. You know, the fans are there to watch the bumping and stuff, and that's what they like. But long as it's safe, in my opinion, long as you ain't intentionally trying to hurt somebody or you could possibly hurt somebody, I have nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
I think a little bit of bumping on the track makes racing better in NASCAR, and that's why a lot of people watch it is for that. Yeah. So I don't see nothing wrong with a little bit of aggressive driving. And
that's right, and you're right, and it seemed like in the 2000s people just kind of got into a line and kind of raced around because it was the safety concerns. Like I said, we had those deaths, and they kind of changed some rules a little bit, and now it's getting back out of that a little bit, and now all this is fueling up and stuff. So, and like we mentioned, it's not actually considered unsportsmanlike to be that way. Some drivers might see that as that way, but it's not. You know, it's just aggressive, hard driving to win.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And, well, we're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we're going to look at, how can we possibly prevent fights from happening in NASCAR and other sports as well. So don't go away. Welcome back to the Pondering Show here on WKUR 94.9, and we're here in the Don Franklin Chevy Buick GMC studio with drag racing driver Lewis Mink. And we left off, we've looked at everything about, aggressive driving, and we've analyzed the situations at Charlotte and Texas and NASCAR and stuff. Now we're going to look at the issue of the fights, and like we touched on before, a lot of parents are upset when they got their little kids sitting in the living room with them and they see these people, adults, role models that they look up to. They see them fighting. What kind of message is that sending to those kids? And parents are upset about that because we live in a world that's so terrified of violence and nonviolent stuff anyway. When they see adults fighting, that's millionaires and sports, racers, it just tears them apart. So is there any actual way at all that fights can be prevented in NASCAR, or is it just destined to happen?
It's just destined to happen. Everybody gets aggravated over different things, and that's just part of racing and any kind of sports. Even if you look at football, if you watch a game, more than likely somebody's going to be trying to fight on her.
Yeah.
Just like with NASCAR, everybody's got their own way of doing things. They're going to get mad over something that happens. Now, the ways that they can prevent the fighting is, number one, stiffer penalties.
Yeah.
For instance, if somebody gets in a fight, suspend them for 2 races, and that's going to hurt sponsorships.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what our drivers are after. They're after sponsorships. They don't, if they don't have sponsors, they're not going to be able to race because they can't afford to fix the cars. They're not going to be able to build the cars and the engines and transmissions and everything goes along with it. So that's one thing that you could do is suspend them for so many races.
Yeah.
Another thing that they could do is fine them. And don't fine them $25,000. I know to us that's a whole lot of money, but to these guys it's not that much.
It's like $25 to us, pretty much. Yeah,
they need to, fine them $200,000, and that would do a whole lot of stopping to that.
Yeah,
that's some major easy ways that NASCAR could come down on. And just like with us, if we get in a fight, for instance, if I get in a fight at London, I could be suspended indefinitely, which means that I won't be able to race there again.
Ever again.
So I think that's something that they should look into doing a little bit. And, kids are watching this, and, Jeff Gordon might be somebody's hero, and they see him out there trying to fight somebody, and that's going to press a bad image into their mind.
Yeah, it is, and it's teaching them. If you want to talk about violence, that's a way to go to it. If it's inspiring little kids to be that way. If their role models are doing it, and I agree with you that too. I mean, when you penalize somebody for 2 races and say they can't be in 2 races in NASCAR, that hurts. That hurts them a lot. Like you said, with sponsorships and stuff, and they lose out on points and they don't make it to certain, the Final Four or whatever. And that's a way to send a message in my book.
Well, and that's really the only way that you really want to see anything being done is if you suspend somebody for 2 to 5 races, then they're going to rethink the way that they acted, or they're going to rethink going over to Brad's pit and trying to fight somebody. Yeah, they are, and it's going to keep teaching them to stay in their car and beat them on the track in the end, And we talk about that. God bless the poor NFL. And now they're having similar problems and situations with stuff like this as well. They've had domestic violence and child abuse stuff, and then also the targeting rule. Back when we were kids, just like with NASCAR, if somebody flew across the field and just flat laid somebody out, that was a good hit. Yeah, that was great, and he was praised for that. Now it's the opposite. They're like, he should. It's almost like a 2-hand touch deal. He shouldn't do, the targeting rule, and that's kind of affected the NFL a little bit, and it's caused some people to fall off the bandwagon from the good glory old days, But it's understandable for the health side because these people with concussions and stuff repeatedly after they retire, they're in bad shape health wise, and it's just bad for them. Yeah, And I agree. And if you go back. Another thing with injuries, even with NASCAR, when they fight, if you looked at Brad and Gordon after the whole fight, you look at all the blood that's on them and stuff, that's just causing injury for nothing, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they just weren't slapping each other around. I mean, they were actually throwing some big fist, punches in there when you really look close at the video. And I agree. And and I think all sports are looking at this now, because they're wanting to protect their drivers, their players, and stuff. And, the NFL is a prime example. NASCAR is a prime example. And, basketball, too. Basketball is just about as dangerous as football can be, except they don't have helmets and shoulder pads. They take it actually kind of worse, because they really bang each other up underneath the goal down there. Those big guys do. And they can get hurt easily, too. And I think safety in all sports is being more focused on, as far as that goes. And so how about, and we mentioned this too, drag racing and other types of racing. Is there any way that fights can be more prevented than that, or do they kind of got a good handle on their fighting situations?
Well, if you look at NHRA and IHRA, there's really not a whole lot of fights that happen.
There's not, is there?
No, and I go back to where I race at the most at London. I mean, you hardly ever see a fight.
Yeah.
You'll see some people getting aggravated with each other, but there's not really any fighting that goes on. In NHRA, they're all the drivers that are professional, your Top Fuel, Funny Car, and Pro Stock drivers, they don't really want to fight because they're afraid of being suspended indefinitely. They're afraid of getting that big fine, because to those guys, $50,000 is a lot of money, and so they got a better handle on it than NASCAR does, in my opinion.
Yeah,
because of the indefinitely.
They're suspended. They're no longer allowed to be there, and that's talk about being serious, and that's the way. Well, and we've already discussed this, and I know you've already shared your opinion on this, but the more fines and penalties seem to be the only way, if they want to, to prevent more fights in NASCAR, and unless they. The NASCAR officials choose not to or to do that, that's the only way it seems to pretty much end it. Because if those guys know that if they stop on pit road or if they do something to fight somebody and they're out for 2 races, missing out on those points and stuff, that they'll take that seriously.
Yeah, I agree.
And until that happens, man,
And I don't ever see NASCAR doing anything.
No,
because they got so many viewers now watching it because they're so excited.
Yeah.
So I don't see them doing much, but in my honest opinion, if they suspend somebody indefinitely or, suspend them for so many races, that's going to help them out the most.
Yeah, exactly. And that's true, too. Well, it looks like we're out of time, and I want to once again thank Lewis Mink for coming in and sharing his expertise with it. And he's a diehard racer and loves racing and knows a lot about it. And I just want to thank you for coming in, Lewis.
Thank you for having me, Doug.
And I also want to thank you all for listening to the Pondering Show, and we will see you here next Saturday at 11 a.m. on WKUR 94.9. Y'all have a great weekend.